13 Reasons Why You Haven't Started Yet and How to Overcome Them. Written and narrated by the Almighty Lewis. Introduction. Perhaps some of you can relate. Someone or something inspires you. You proceed to preparation, and when the day finally comes, you freeze. You feel stuck, uncomfortable, doubtful, and ultimately you postpone it. You tell yourself you'll come back to it another day when the time feels right. This is normal human behavior that we all experience at some point in our lives. There's nothing wrong with it, nor are you a bad person or a low performer for feeling this way. Believe me, I've been there. People will tell you that you're lazy, you're worthless, you're incapable, and so many other things that brings us down. It even hurts when those words come straight from the mouths of those that we love and care about. I find it illogical when someone tells me that I can't get started in something because of who I am. Let me tell you something. Nobody, I repeat, nobody is in your shoes. Nobody has the capacity to understand your sense of self better than yourself. With that in mind, how can someone say with certainty what you're capable of and what you're not? It's hilarious, to be honest. Most people are really looking to boost their own ego by bringing you down and pointing out reasons why you can't be better than them. Here's the thing. Getting started is about getting something done and a process you pursue from start to finish. We're all different. While there might be somebody out there who is doing things better than you, and there probably is, that's not the only reason to start. We'll go deeper into the different ways you can get started later throughout this book. I believe there is more than one reason as to why people don't get started in something besides just fear. Sure, fear seems to be the most common reason, but it's not the only one. The reason that you want to know all the reasons is because they apply in different situations. Getting started in one thing can be different than getting started in another. Once you learn them all, you'll be able to apply the proper strategies and techniques to any specific situation. Believe me, you don't want to be taking the wrong approaches to a problem because not only will you not get started, but also you will get frustrated and feel resentment towards starting anything. I don't want that for you. I want to equip you with the necessary information you need to get started in any activity or project you want to dive into. I want to make you aware of what's standing between you and your desired objective. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start learning about how you can get started right now. In order to ensure that you make the best out of this book, pick one thing you've been wanting to get started with. You can also pick something you started a while ago, but then quit and now you're trying to start again. Now think of the reasons why you haven't started. There may be a lot of them, so write them down because they will be useful in the upcoming chapters. That's it. Chapter 1. You lost hope. Think about this. Have you ever tried to start something only to find out that you were unable to keep yourself in the journey? Then you tried to start again, but you didn't have the same confidence and belief in yourself. Want to know the reason why this happens? Simple. You lost hope in the process. It's very possible that when you got started the first time, you did it from a place of inspiration, and that's awesome. Inspiration is one of the two fundamental motivators that exist in life. The other is desperation. Let's focus on inspiration though. So let's say you get inspired by something, so you go try it only to find out that it's not as easy as it seems. This happens all the time. So the question is, how do you fix this? Well, first, congratulations for even starting because most people don't even get past starting. Second, you were set for failure right from the start and you didn't even know it. Why? Because you weren't properly armed to handle the initial exposure to said activity from the start. You simply jumped in on emotion without logically calibrating the process. Now, like I said, this is good, but it's not sustainable. You can't just allow your emotions to run the process. If you want to get started for good on something, there has to be some sort of process in place that allows for structure to take place. Getting started with random goals and purpose is essentially suicide. Think of it as a bridge. You're trying to get to the other side, so you take one step into the bridge only for it to break down. What do you do now? Do you simply grab some inspiration to have the bridge fix itself, or do you set up a plan to repair the bridge or find an alternative way? Hopefully you chose the second option. That's what it's about. Seeing the situation from a logical standpoint. If inspiration is all you rely on, you're shooting yourself on the foot from the start. Inspiration is great and required to even consider starting, but the follow-up is more important. What process do you have in place? How are you going to go from beginner to advanced? What steps and goals need to be attained along the way to the desired outcome? You need to have a plan, and then you need to execute it. Now, there will be times when the plan doesn't work out. So what do? Rewrite it, and then go execute it again. My plan to get started and yours should look very different even if we're after a similar objective. You may be asking how or why. Because like I said previously, we're all different. We come from different places and different cultures that shape our belief system, so we naturally have different ways of operating to accomplishing similar outcomes, and that's okay. Don't get frustrated if somebody else's process doesn't work for you. Always be open to try a different avenue that's unique to you. Losing hope will keep you stagnant and in retreat. That is not what the self wants, and I'm sure the people who you will help in the future with your success will not want that either. So if this is you, get your hopes back up and try one more time. Lastly, how vast and complex does your plan have to be? Very simple. Remember, if you're just getting started and you want to keep things simple, your plan should lay out only the basics of whatever it is you want to get started with. There will be time to step into advanced territory, but now is not the time. Just plan to take a few steps into the process, or as it is commonly known, just get your foot in the door. Chapter 2. Lack of congruency. Ever wondered if what you're trying to get started with is even congruent to you? First and foremost, this might sound contradicting to the goal of this book, but my initial approach to this type of situation is to not start. That's right. If you feel forced to do something that's not congruent with your values and beliefs, don't do it. If you feel that you will hurt people by retracting, then let them get hurt. It is not your job to please people. Now, if you're unable to say no at the time, then start working towards breaking whatever ties between you and the opposing individual. It's not right to be forced into starting something you don't want to. Now, let's just say that you're someone who's still trying to figure out life and you're not really sure if the activity is congruent or not to you. Then the choice is yours. You're reading this book because you want to get started. So let's show you how to get started in this situation. First, eliminate all expectations and don't emotionally attach yourself to the outcome. Remember, you're only there to experiment. You're not there to be the best at it. You're not there to impress anyone. You're only there to test the waters. So let go and enjoy yourself. If you get started and do great, awesome. If you don't, awesome. It does not matter because it wasn't 100% congruent from the beginning anyway. You will make that choice after your first encounter. You have nothing to worry as far as the outcome is concerned because the only real objective is to try, nothing else. All in all, never get started on something that is not congruent to you unless it's for experimentation purposes. You don't want to waste energy on something that doesn't feel congruent to you. The truth is, you won't be around for an eternity, so you must pick what you get started with wisely. People around you may think they know better, but they don't, so you can expect them to tell you things such as you're a coward and many other profanities that I won't mention here. Let them talk. People like to trash talk other people for not having the bravery to step up and do something without knowing the full story. First of all, these people are ignorant for not understanding the context of human psychology, and second, you're already brave by making the choice of doing or not doing. Most people just go with the flow. Don't be one of those people. Be proactive, have standards, and stand up for yourself. Make sure you have a purpose for starting things. I will talk about purpose later in this book. So, if this is you, remember, if it's not congruent to your values, don't do it. And if you don't know but would like to find out, then do it as part of your self-discovery journey. Chapter 3. The Perfectionist. I am almost certain that many of you have dealt with this, the grandiose idea of perfection. To put it in simple terms, we get stuck and don't start anything because we crave perfection right from the start. We really need it to be perfect or we won't start. Now, just to get it out of the way, it's impossible to get anything perfect right from the get-go because you have no experience to begin with. Second, perfection is never reached. Only mastery can be attained, which is something very different. The idea of perfection usually comes from our sense of self. We believe ourselves to be perfect, which is why we want everything we produce to be like us, perfect. This couldn't be more far from the truth. If we continue to see our work or anything we produce as a reflection of who we are, we will struggle a whole lot to get started, and rising from failure would be a very difficult task. The perfection mindset is not a requirement to get started. There's also something else you must understand. Perfection is not real. Perfection is an illusion. It's just a word we use when our emotions align with our desires. That's it. Perfection in of itself doesn't make you more valuable than others. Perfection is just a word. So here's the deal. Don't rely on the perfect plan or circumstances to get started. Because truth is, they don't exist. What does exist, however, is mastery. Mastery comes from consistency and education. In order to reach a certain level of mastery, you have to practice day in and day out. You also have to seek out mentors that will teach you along your journey so that your practice is in line with your goals. As you can see, there is no scenario where mastery is attained from the moment you get started. That happens after you get started. So stop focusing on getting it right and getting it perfect right from the start because it's nuts. There are exceptions where you will get lucky enough to put out a good performance right from the start. That does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it won't always be that way. It actually rarely is. It's more likely that you fail and fall hard once you get started. You might even make a fool out of yourself, and that's okay. Remember that your work has nothing to do with your identity. You're doing your best with the knowledge and practice that you have at hand. Sure, your inspiration and motivation may be really high, but you can't expect that to compensate for your lack of skill. Developing a skill takes practice, like said previously, so just get started. Don't worry about perfection or any notion related to it. It does not exist. Be unique. Also, don't fall into the trap of wanting to get started by impersonating someone else's craft just because you believe it to be perfect. There's a difference between getting inspired by the person and straight out copying the person. You always want to stay true to yourself. You do that by doing it your way, even if it's not perfect, because if we're going that route, it's already perfect. Why? Because to say otherwise would be to judge your work and impose my idea of perfection onto you. I see this a lot in work sites where employees have bosses that want things done in a perfect way, and if they don't, it's not good at all. While there is room for improvement, I don't believe that there is a set standard of perfection for anything. It's all about where you want to take your work. It's about how much work you are willing to put into it until you find it to be perfect in your own eyes. So next time somebody tries to discourage you saying that you aren't perfect enough to get started, ignore them and start anyway. You will improve over time if your heart is in it, which I will talk about later in the book. But if not, then it was never congruent to you as we discussed in the previous chapter, so just let it go. Win-win for everyone. Chapter 4. It's too hard. Lewis, I really want to get started, but it's too hard. I don't think I'll be able to do it. I've heard this many times, and I've even said it to myself, but my response always was, of course it's hard. Why wouldn't it be? I mean, you're just getting started. You have no experience, perhaps some knowledge, but it's all theory, so you really don't know if it works or not. Can you expect it to be easy? Impossible. It can't be easy no matter what other people tell you. Sure, once you get started, there is the possibility that it will get easier with time. But before that, there is no way it could be easy. Look, it will be hard. It will be brutal to take that first step and jump into the challenge. That is a given. There is no way that it could go otherwise. You can have all the motivation in the world. People close to you may be giving you helpful steps to get started, and even then, it's still hard. Why? Because look, at a glance, it may seem that the only hard thing to do is the actual thing at hand. That is true, but it's not the only thing. What people don't see is the power of your mind and your emotional intelligence. Some people simply lack self-esteem and confidence to approach new challenges with ease. I will discuss this later in the book. Another thing is, people don't know how to control their emotions, so this prevents them from getting started for two reasons. The first is the fear of the unknown. Look, if you're just getting started, you're looking at doing something for the first time. You're unfamiliar with the tools, the environment, and the situation itself. This is very hard to deal with if you're not accustomed to putting yourself under those stressful situations. The second one is fear of failure and dealing with it. Because you're not really familiar with the situation, you won't be able to notice how well you're doing because you're expecting a result that's not really attainable right from the start. In other words, you're expecting the pot of gold and you just hit the pavement with the shovel once. However, you fail to notice that picking up the shovel and pounding the pavement once is already a success in of its own, even if you didn't realize it or aren't praised for it. So it's hard. Very hard to deal with those emotional situations on top of the skills that you have to perform for the first time. So if this is you, what do? Realize that it's hard because it is. That is the truth. Don't be oblivious to it. No matter how easy it may seem or what society says, Always remember that we're all different. What is easy for me might be hard for you, and that's okay. We're not all naturally talented at everything. So accept that it's hard and take that enormous pressure off your shoulders. As for dealing with fear, really quick, the unknown will always be scary until it's not. So the faster you're able to jump in and get started, the faster that fear will dissipate. Dealing with fear of failure is like saying I'm dealing with a learning experience. Failure is to be learned from, not to be feared from. Later in the book, you will find a chapter that focuses solely on fear. So just get started. It's hard, I know, but get started anyway. Chapter 5, High Expectations. Do you expect a lot from yourself right from the start? Let's just say you're planning to start a gym routine that consists of 10 different exercises that you've never done before. Now, why would you have so many different exercises right from the start? Well, the reason you're doing this is because you thought that by doing 10 different exercises 5 times every week, you will get to your end goal faster. Do you see the problem here? Before you even get started, you're already placing a heavy load of work on yourself that just makes the entire process dreadful and not fun at all. What you really feel like doing is swinging back to comfort and taking the path of least resistance. Honestly, why wouldn't you? It's obvious. Nobody wants to do that much work from the start. Here's why this happens despite actually knowing the fact. First, it's the ego. Our sense of pride gets in the way and tells us that the more we're able to accomplish, the better we are as a person. This is far from the truth, as it doesn't matter how accomplished you get in life. It will never be enough because you simply can't become a master at everything in this world. You can only become a master at a handful of things. Knowing that, I want you to think about something you are very good at right now. Now tell me, how long did it take you to actually get confident enough to add load to your craft? Allow me to use this book as an example. I aspire one day to write a full-fledged book. Does that mean I have to put all my focus and effort on writing that book when I'm still working on my writing style? Of course not. I need to first get the foundational part of the process first, on which I could build enough confidence to increase the load of work I stack on it. You follow? If you add a huge load of work with no foundation of confidence, it's like trying to build a building on top of jelly. It's doomed to come apart sooner than you think. Going back to the ego, you're trying to prove to yourself that you can actually master the craft and get really good. There is nothing wrong with that except for the expectation of getting there fast by stacking a huge load of work from the start. It doesn't work that way. Mastery takes time. A lot, actually. It is also true that with time, if you decide to stack more work than you can handle and challenge yourself, you will get there faster. But that comes after your foundation of courage. If you don't have that, you can't expect to overload yourself with work that will eventually lead you to getting frustrated and ultimately quitting. You don't want to quit before you start. You want to start and stay on the journey till the end. Another point I want to touch on, just because you're confident in yourself, it doesn't mean you should go all out. There are no cheat codes to this game called mastery. Remember, you can't be a master at everything, but you can attain a high level of competence that puts you above the average person. So take it easy. Remember, you're just starting. It's the beginning of the journey. There is no logical reason to start off with a huge load of expectations on your shoulders. This is why games are split into a specific set of difficulties: easy, medium, and hard. Sometimes there's more, but they go along those lines. The easy mode is meant to build your foundational confidence. So basically, you're getting comfortable with the controls, with the character you're playing, with the setting and feeling of the game. The medium helps make that confidence even stronger by challenging you to use your foundational skills for more than just basic tasks. Finally, we have the hard mode, which pushes your confidence and skills to test you if you're ready to become the master or you still need more challenges in the medium zone. Treat your journey the same way. It's a game. Play to become the master, not the ultimate beginner. Chapter 6, Motivation and Purpose. Now, I know we spoke about this earlier in the book, but in this chapter I want to elaborate a little deeper. First, what is motivation? Motivation is simply personal emotional leverage. The key word is personal. This means that neither me or anyone else can decide your motivation. We can help and guide you in the direction of it, but we can't choose it for you. Why? Because if we do, it won't have the necessary effect, and that is not what you want. You want your motivation to stem from your own belief system and not someone else's. Don't be a puppet. We all have our own belief system and our own set of values. Live up to them and extract your motivation from those. Your motivation should be strong enough to get you through the toughest times of the journey, because believe me, it won't be pretty sometimes, so you have to be ready to hang on tight and stay the course. That is what motivation is there for, to keep you on track, nothing else. Motivation is not there to make the path any easier or ease the pain. Motivation is the small boost of energy you get throughout the journey. But what about purpose? Purpose is vision. Purpose is the destination. Where's your hard work and effort ultimately going to lead to? A journey in of itself can exist if there isn't a destination to arrive to at the end of it. Purpose follows the same rules of motivation. It has to be personal. I can't pick the destination of your journey, and neither can anyone else. You must develop a very personal and compelling vision for your destination. This is helpful because you want to know exactly where you are going so you don't get sidetracked. In this very confusing world, it's very easy to jump from one thing to another without actually mastering anything. If you do end up doing this, it'll make it harder for you to start anything, because you will start building a track record of not being able to follow through your goals and ambitions. Ultimately, develop a compelling personal purpose and stick with it. When you have your motivation and purpose in place, it makes it so much easier to get started now, because you have a plan. You have a starting point and a destination. You have a reason to do it that's personal and will fulfill you, not someone else. That is the point of it all. You want to be on top of your journey, not pressured by society, friends, or family. This is for you, and if it is for others, that is your choice. So just get started. That purpose can't be reached if you don't step into the journey. Also, don't be surprised if your motivation and purpose slightly change during your journey, because they can. Once you build your confidence, you will start to believe more and more, so your motivation will increase and your purpose might become even bigger. Same goes for the opposite. Sometimes we need a big motivation and purpose to get started, only to later find out that we didn't really want to make a huge impact, and that's okay too. Chapter 7. Trauma. Have you experienced an unconscious will to start? What I mean is that for whatever reason, you were forced into starting something you didn't plan to. Perhaps it was the circumstances, or it was someone who pushed you into starting. Whatever the case may be, this situation most likely led to two outcomes. You either get lucky and succeed, or you fail. If you succeed, you will feel good about yourself, and perhaps you might even try it again until you eventually fail. When this happens, people tend to stop and simply quit. If this is you, read the previous chapters on lost hope, congruency, and motivation and purpose. They will help you get started again. However, let's just say it went the opposite way and you failed very badly to the point that you are traumatized. Perhaps you liked it a bit and you want to try it again, but because your first experience wasn't good, you're scared. This is normal. It happens all the time. When this happens, you have to look at the logistics. Right now, if you were to analyze the situation, most likely it would be from an emotional standpoint. You may even experience shivers, pain, worthlessness, amongst other emotions. It's normal to feel this way after getting beat down, because it's true. Logically, you did get beat down. That's a fact. Your interpretation of the fact, however, can be changed. Here's why. First of all, if you're thrown into a situation you have no preparation for, chances are you will fail because you are incapable of success. At least at that point you were. It doesn't mean you can't improve, and that is key. Everyone can get beat up really badly by an experience and rise to become a legend of that experience. But how do you do this? First, accept the fact. You failed, embrace it, don't fight it. Failure is part of any journey. You can't escape it no matter how prepared you are. Second, let me tell you something. You have an advantage here due to your experience. You want to know why? Because of your failure, you can now break down your experience and see exactly where you failed and what prior preparation could have helped you produce a more desirable outcome. You should be looking at the situation from a more logical standpoint right now. Now, all you have to do is approach the situation from a place of willingness and consciousness. Under your terms, to be more specific. This is what you need, a sense of control. You need to regain control because remember, your first encounter took control away from you by controlling your reaction, your follow-up action, and your why. Now, when you start again, be sure to lower the bar to gain an easy victory. I spoke about this in the It's Too Hard chapter. You want to start off easy. Remember that your goal in the beginner stage is to build your foundational confidence. From there, you can start pushing and challenging yourself in a healthy way to gain even more confidence and control. Then if you want to become a master, that's when you push yourself into unreasonable and unhealthy levels where only the strongest survive and become legends. If that is you, go for it. If not, move on to the next thing that will motivate you enough to reach those levels and become a legend. On a last note, trauma can be more severe and may require professional medical help. However, I would encourage you to give this process a try beforehand because most of the time you don't need a therapist. You just need mental strength, hope, and a willingness to step out of your emotions and thrive. Chapter 8. Outside Judgment. Times come when you have this brilliant idea to get started in something, but instead of just starting right away, you start asking people if it's a good idea or not. After asking around if the idea is good or not, you weigh out the pros and cons and draw a conclusion from those if you should start or not. Let me tell you something. Whatever the outcome is, it doesn't matter. This approach is wrong on every level. If you are told yes more times than no, then you will get started, but not from a place of motivation, but rather a place of approval. This means that when the journey gets tough, guess what you will do? Ask again if you should stay on the journey or not. And then guess what? It could be that the same people you asked once, asked said yes, now say no because they see an obstacle and based on their judgment, you are incapable of getting past it. Let's backtrack a bit now. What if the people you asked aren't necessarily positive and encouraging? What if by default they are just negative and pessimistic? Now what? No matter how capable, how enthusiastic you are, if you ask the wrong people for approval, chances are they will tell you don't do it. Another factor, it takes a person to really know you to identify if what you're about to start is congruent to you or not. So to ask for approval is pretty much a way to justify yourself not starting because most likely they will tell you don't do it. They will justify and try to prove it to you with facts about other people failing hard at it. Listen carefully. First of all, failure is inevitable. Perhaps you don't fail as hard as others do due to talent, luck, intelligence, assistance, and or preparation, but regardless, you will fail. Don't let that stop you. Second, it's your life and your journey. You're the one who will be taking the hits as well as the glory when it's all said and done. So why should you base your decisions on someone else's opinion? They won't be the ones taking the blows when things get real. It's you. You are free to choose for what cause you are willing to take a few blows in order to arrive at the destination. So stop asking for approval. Stop seeking for someone to approve of you starting because you have what it takes to do it yourself. This book is meant to help you get started on your own without someone else telling you that you can do it. Now, don't get me wrong. There is nothing wrong with encouragement from others. That is great and people will support you and encourage you all the time, but you shouldn't make it a requirement to get started. Why? Because here's the thing. If you have the need to receive praise and encouragement from the start, that means the opposite can also affect your starting point, which is negative influence. People telling you that you aren't inclined to start or that you will fail, you suck, you're a failure, you're lazy, will drown you into the gutter. So here's the thing. The best way to start is to develop your own approval. Approve of yourself that you're already good enough to start any journey you like and you are free to drop it at any time too. You don't need anyone telling you that you're doing the right or wrong thing. You just need to trust yourself by trusting your motivation and your purpose. Bingo! I hope a light bulb shined on you right now because if you read the chapter on motivation and purpose, you should have realized that in the end, it's impossible for someone to approve of you starting something because it's just not possible for others to relate to your motivation and purpose because of how personal it is. Remember that those are very personal. I can't possibly relate to your motivation because I am not you. Motivation is built upon your life experiences, which then shape your belief system and values. I don't, neither does anyone else, have your life experiences, so we can't have the same motivation and purpose. We can get close, but never exact. Chapter 9. Lack of context. Earlier, I spoke about starting a lot of things, but never quite finishing them. In this chapter, I want to focus on the mindset behind this phenomenon and how you can combat it if you find yourself in this place. So, you want to start this new thing. You have hope that this time you can stick through, but deep down you have this track record of not finishing anything, so you get disappointed and don't start. This is totally normal. Let me tell you the number one reason why this happens. Lack of congruency. All of that stuff that you started but never followed through was never meant to be part of your journey, but at the same time, it was. Let me explain. Usually, when we are young, we go through the world searching for a purpose, for a calling, for a passion. This drives us to many things left and right. This is perfectly normal. It is also true that we've come across those few things that we thought were the one. We told everyone. Perhaps we even got people involved in the journey only to drop out a few days or months later. Perhaps we lost money, we lost friends, we lost a loved one, we lost our confidence, and much more. It happens. This is normal. Believe me, I've been there. It hurts, I know, but it's not bad. It's just part of your life journey. These are things you have to do in order to finally land on the one thing that will fulfill every part of you. So with this in mind, how do you get started when we have a track record of not following up and falling short in our goals and ambitions? First and foremost, forgiveness. You must forgive yourself for hurting the people you might have hurt along the way. The people that perhaps supported you and you let down. The people that believed so much and even joined you. You must forgive yourself for everything. It's okay. You're not a bad person, you're just a human. Figuring anything out is never easy. It takes hard work because let's be honest, you don't have a map or guide telling you what are the right steps to take. Even the people who try to advise you will do their best, but it's your life, not theirs. Nobody knows what is best for you but yourself. Keep that in mind. Next, realize that everything that you started and never followed through was because it wasn't congruent to you to begin with. Think about it. Maybe someone told you that you had a talent at something because they saw you perform and you did great. So now you feel the pressure. It could also be something trendy that looked cool, so you gave it a try and got obsessed with it. Obsession is key. Being obsessed right from the start, it's not a good start because obsession dies out once you snap out of it or another obsession comes by. Also, it'll make you prone to not tolerating failure properly, especially at the start of something. It is crucial that you accept failure from the start because you will. If you're obsessed, you will get angry and sink into unhealthy emotions that will lead you to quit sooner than you think. It could also be for egoistic reasons. There's a few things out there that if you get good at them, you can get a lot of praise. For example, making a lot of money as an entrepreneur. If this is your reason, you will not go far because there is no congruency and your motivation and purpose is weak due to it not being personal. Once we get this out of the way, it's time to look at this new thing you want to start and do a congruency test, get your motivation and purpose right, and get going. Your past does define your future, but your interpretation of the past matters more than the fact itself. Always follow your heart. Chapter 10. Idols. Have you ever gotten stuck waiting for your inspiration through idols? Slightly different than seeking approval for a few reasons. You're in this constant search for the perfect idol to connect with, and once you find them, only then will you get started. This is in essence seeking approval, only difference is you seek it in people who've achieved massive success in whatever it is you want to get started. Here's the cold truth. You can't possibly know who will be the right idol to look up to unless you've done a lot of work on yourself. Chances are that if you're having trouble starting things, you don't know yourself very well. Also, most of these idols don't show their roots. They may share it very briefly, but they don't for most of the time. This means that you won't get a close look at how they got started and what obstacles they had to deal with along the way. On top of that, you can't verify the legitimacy of that information unless you meet this idol in person and actually become a close person in their life to trust you enough to let you in with their life. For all you know, they are putting up a character in a story that complements that character so that you get inspired by them, you look up to them, and talk about them everywhere you go, hence free advertisement for them on your part. Now, the last reason why you don't want to depend on an idol to get started is because your reason is coming from the wrong place. You want to be them or like them. Usually this happens because you don't feel good enough, so you look up to someone else's confidence and self-esteem to replicate upon yourself. Here's the thing, your idol won't be there along your journey. For example, let's say you want to become a singer. You listen to their voice and you're like, oh my God, I want to sing just like them. So let me go sign up for singing classes and practice so that hopefully one day I can sing like him or her. Well, guess what? When you realize that you're so out of tune and you can't seem to have the same persona on stage, what are you going to do? Listen to more songs from them until you see a difference? Bad move. Remember that you can't stay on the journey unless your motivation is personal. Anyone can aspire and try to replicate a singer's voice, but it's another to try to be just like them. If you are in this place, there are a few things you can do to take advantage of having idols in your life instead of allowing them to hinder your ability to start something. First, look at the routines that got them to where they are now and keep those in mind. Next, fall in love with the field, not just one performer. In this case, look at the genre of the singer and listen to others in the genre. What are they doing? How did they start? Love the genre overall. Lastly, ask yourself, why do you idolize this idol? Is it really their craft or is it their confidence? Maybe it's the way they talk, the way they dress, the way they connect with their audience. From there, take a look at your life and see which of those is worth taking a few blows in order to get better at. Perhaps you want to be more confident in communication, so you do that instead of singing. Remember that the last thing you want to do is get started in something just to feel better about yourself or fulfill your ego and show the world that you are better than them. Don't do it for validation or approval from the world. Do it from a place of inspiration and let the idol do their thing while you do yours. It doesn't hurt to take inspiration from the outside, just don't make it a requirement and waste your time looking for one. If you get inspired by someone to start something in a completely different field, get started anyway. Don't let the idols give you the green light. The green light is for you to turn on, not for others. Chapter 11. It's too dangerous. There's a couple things out there that seem dangerous on the surface level, and sometimes they literally are. In this case, most people don't start and wait until it gets safer, but the truth is, it usually never does, and if it does, it changes the game completely because the level of congruency and motivation/purpose drops to the level of glory. The starting point is affected as well as the destination. So what do? Well, once again, we measure the level of congruency in your motivation and purpose. Once those are clear and you're good to go, don't start yet. Be smart about it and weigh out the risks of doing it alone. This is one of those cases where you should consider getting a coach or at the very least have someone with experience to help you out in the beginning stages. Remember that the goal is to build your foundational confidence. If the thing you're about to start is dangerous, there's already a high level of difficulty. So you have to decrease that by getting guidance or at the very least information. You need all the helping hands you can get to facilitate the process as much as possible. Your life can be in danger at this point, so it's best to go through this in a safe manner. Warning: do not let your ego get the best of you. This is especially important when faced with this situation because you are at risk. The last thing you want to do is throw yourself in the situation clueless and risk injury or even death. It is not worth it. Get help, get assistance. And if you really can't, at least get information. Read a book, watch a video, listen to an audio program, watch a documentary, anything that'll give you an advantage when you're about to perform. Be warned, however, when you're out doing your research, make sure you look up beginner level information. Remember the ego. Your ego will push you to look at the glorious shots and what could come out of becoming a master. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's useless if you haven't started yet. You need to start first and learn the first steps before trying to learn more advanced techniques. Once this is done, now we proceed to the motivation and purpose. Is this on point? Ask yourself if it's personal, and am I willing to take the blows associated with this journey in order to reach the glory? Is the glory worth it to me? Once these questions are answered properly, then we can proceed to start. A few more pointers about being in this position. People will try to bring you down, sometimes even by force. This time it isn't just about people trying to purposefully bring you down. Now it could be for your own safety and protection. It's normal for people who love you to care for you and try to protect you from getting hurt in any way. This will hurt from your end, but you have to ignore them. Your motivation and purpose will be put to the test here, so if you find yourself slipping out of the journey very easily, then your motivation isn't as strong, so you should consider switching motivation or dropping what you're about to start completely. You decide based on your own judgment because it could be a sign that you're not completely on the right motivation and or purpose. Lastly, whatever you're about to start, do it under your own responsibility. If it's something that could cost your life or serious injury, you should consider it very deeply. Nonetheless, I felt I had to cover it because it is a thing people struggle with to start. And who knows, you may be up to it and become legendary. You might develop a safer way to attain the same glory. You might even develop a safer way to attain the same glory. You might become an inspiration. The choice is yours. The higher the risk, the higher the reward. Chapter 12. It's never been done. One of the hardest things to do is to start something that's never been done, or at the very least, you aren't aware that it has been done before due to its lack of popularity. Sometimes you get motivated so quick and the congruency is so obvious that it doesn't seem too hard on the surface level. This eventually leads to not allowing enough time to think about what you're about to start, and right when you're about to do it, you say, I can't. You say things like, that's ridiculous, it will never work, what am I thinking about? I'm going crazy for having such an idea. At this point, you stop yourself from even starting due to a lack of trust in yourself. You don't trust yourself enough to execute your idea because you don't have the backing of someone else who has done it and succeeded. You feel alone with your idea, so you decide to completely drop it because it sounds insane. Or perhaps you start telling yourself, there is no way someone hasn't come up with this already. I can't possibly be that smart to have such an ingenious idea, so you just drop it. Being alone with an idea is completely normal. Reinforcement from the outer world is something we are programmed to do because it signals us that we are doing the right thing. And that is key, doing the right thing. We focus so much on doing the right thing and we forget about doing what we genuinely feel. We're so disconnected with our intuition and gut feeling that we only listen to society about what's right and acceptable out there. Reason is, the approval and validation is in those things. If you're getting started on something that's already been done, it gives you a slight advantage in the fact that it has been done. And if you do it, people will know how to validate and approve of you because it has been done before. Now, if it's never been done before, the difficulty of it can increase because there is no guidance to follow but your gut. So there's that. Like we said before, the higher the risk, the higher the glory. Let's get to the core of it here. What is the worst that can happen? It doesn't work out, you fail. Well, those things happen anyway, even if the thing has been done before. Nothing different about that. What else? You look like a fool for believing in something that sounded impossible from the start? That's been done before too. People have come off as fools for trying to defy logic and failing miserably. Now think about it. What is the best thing that can happen? You innovate. You create something that has never been done before. Your creation will not only benefit you, but others too. If you haven't done the research, there are so many things that we use today that were once considered foolish and impossible to do. It was the courage of one individual that made it all happen. That individual could be you. How? Well, besides getting the basics down of congruency, motivation, and purpose, you must take a leap of faith. You need to trust yourself and approve of yourself 100%. You can't rely in no way to anything external. You have to look into yourself, love yourself, and go for it. Start now. Ultimately, understand that you have a gift. You have something that very few people have. It is your duty and responsibility to do something with it. Start now and find out where it leads you. You might be surprised by how much is possible after you start. This is one of those cases where your self-belief starts to get stronger after you start and not before. Chapter 13, Fear. Fear, the supreme cause holding you back from starting. Let's be honest, fear stops the majority of us. But if we really think about it, what are we really scared of? Fear stems from 4 different places. We fear judgment of others, we fear unworthiness, we fear rejection, and we fear the unknown. Let's break these down and show you how you can put them aside in order to get started right away. Remember, fear can't be eliminated. It can only be put aside momentarily to allow you to do the thing anyway, which is what we want ultimately, because in of itself, fear isn't bad. Fear keeps us alive. It keeps us safe from danger and points us in the direction of safety. The problem is that sometimes this mechanism inside of us sometimes gets activated even when our life isn't necessarily in danger. This is the moment when we have to put our fear aside and trust ourselves enough to accomplish the task regardless of any fear being present. Now, why do we fear judgment? Sometimes we have to start things in front of people we love, or for that matter, we decide to start something next to someone whose judgment could affect us massively, so we decide not to try because we know we will fail. I don't blame you. Chances are that if you are doing something for the first time, you will do it wrong. You have to relax and know that it's okay. Embrace that failure by laughing. I'm serious. It's ridiculous to think you will do your best right from the start. So fail and laugh. This will show you and others that you knew the fail was coming and you were okay with it. This isn't about faking it either. You should laugh because to think that you will do fantastic is just your ego telling you that you're better than this when in fact you are not, at least not at the moment. Next, unworthiness. This comes from the ego. It's also associated with failing, but the fear now is that if you fail, that says something about you as a person entirely. One failure does not determine our entire identity. It just determines your level of competence with the thing, and given the fact that you are just starting, your competence level should be very low, the lowest it could possibly be. From there on, it could only get better. So remember, don't let your ego tell you that you should be better than what you did because your level of competence doesn't lie. If you're just starting, you can't be any good. Don't expect anything major and simply express gratitude to the fact that you started. Clap and give yourself a pat on the back. Next, rejection. There are times when the things you are going to start involve impressing someone else. For example, as a guy, you may be approaching a girl for the first time. You're about to start, and most likely the chance of rejection is pretty high if it's your first time. As a girl, you may be doing a trial for a team and you have to impress the coach. The way to deal with this is to have a mindset of abundance. You have to think that she isn't the only girl out there and that this isn't the only team out there. You can still be part of another team and you can also approach another girl. Outside of that, you can't control the outcome because we're talking about impressing another person. That is something you can't control. Do your best, hope for the best, and be ready to have another shot because you will if you are open for it. Perhaps not the same team or girl, and that's okay. So just get started and see what happens. Lastly, the fear of the unknown. This is very common, and let me tell you something. There is nothing I can tell you that can prepare you for the unknown. Learn what you can beforehand and let that be enough to start and then calibrate later. Once you start, it won't be unknown. Only then can you deal with it because you know what you're working with. Be positive and optimistic about the unknown and get out there. Only then will the unknown become known so that you're able to work with it better. Lastly, once you know what fear you're dealing with, deal with it properly and then apply the proper motivation and purpose. Due to the fear, these might fall short, but don't worry about that. Your motivation will increase once you build your foundational confidence. So just pick anything that'll get you started and calibrate later. Conclusion. Alright, we have reached the end of this audiobook. I really hope that after listening to this audiobook, you get started doing the one thing you've been thinking about starting. It means a lot to me that you start and that you stay on board of your journey. People out there need you to be successful so that you're able to impact their lives with your expertise. Get started today. Be sure to carry this audiobook with you everywhere. Life happens out there, which is why I turned this book into an audiobook so that you're able to make use of it whenever you're out there. When the time comes, you have this audiobook right in your phone. Pull it out and see what is stopping you and how you can overcome the obstacle and get started right away. Also, use this audiobook as an act of protection. I've always said it, it's a battlefield out there. People are constantly trying to convince you to start doing things that seem right in their own little world. Some people may be so persuasive that you buy into their ideas and then you start only to find out you can't and now you feel like a failure. You feel bad and they pound you hard for sucking when in fact it wasn't even congruent to you and there was no personal motivation and purpose on your part, so you were doomed to fail in the first place. Don't let them push you around. Push them around. This audiobook is your secret weapon. Use it, thank me later. Thank you for listening to this audiobook, 13 Reasons Why You Haven't Started Yet and How to Overcome Them, written and narrated by the Almighty Lewis.